Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Curtain Calls, Crypto Hipsters Curtain Calls. This is episode 13. The title of this episode is called Peace of Mind, How to Break Free from Instant Dopamine Kicks and Make Solid Long-Term Crypto Investing Choices. This episode is a compilation of 4 Crypto Hipster podcasts from season 6 through 8. And this one and the next one, 14, are going to be focused on crypto investing and trading. Okay. So this episode combines 4 clips from 4 podcasts. The first one is from season 8. It was on April of this past year. And I spoke with David Materazzi, who's the CEO of Galileo FX. And he shared his insights on how anyone can become an expert crypto trader. Now, you have to navigate the market to do that, but his approach is pretty simple, and anybody can do it. So listen to that part. And then the next clip is from season 7. And I spoke with Aakash Athawasya, who is the head of research at PYOR. And we spoke about how to uncover hidden stories behind crypto prices and use custom analytics to solve blind spots in your investment thesis. Very in-depth conversation. Check it out. The third clip, also from season 7, I spoke with Phillip Alexeev, who is the Chief Growth Officer at CrossFi. And we spoke about how to avoid chasing greed and illicit activity during crypto bull markets. A lot of people chase illicit activity, have no idea it's illicit. So he helps identify that and how to avoid a greedy chase, and make a solid investment mandate decisions. So, and the fourth person had a wonderful conversation with the founder of Global Prop Trader back in March 2024, season 6. His name is Casey Stubbs. Casey Stubbs, he talks about how to become a successful crypto trader by developing a winning trading mindset. Mindset's very important, especially when you're trying to kick that instant dopamine kick and chase when you're already behind the 8 ball. So these 4 make up episode 13. And like I said, the title of this episode is Peace of Mind, How to Break Free from instant dopamine kicks to make solid long-term crypto investing choices. So my podcasts are available on Spotify, Anchor, Apple, YouTube, iHeartRadio. Please check this out. And at the end, I'll ask you some things. Let me know your thoughts at the end, and enjoy. Have been the trading habits in crypto specifically? Because I saw one statistic this morning. It said the Solana meme coin trading was down 90%. It makes sense to me. That makes sense.
Trading volume.
Yeah, but what have you seen?
So the crypto world is definitely growing in numbers, even if it doesn't look like it. It's not reflected on some prices, but we see that it's really growing. Like the actual number of people investing in crypto is growing, the absolute number. And so as it grows, you see that different groups form, right? It's not just one single group, like with the beginning of Bitcoin, where you had this group of, passionate, cryptography, hackers, community that really hit them. That was like the core community, right? It was like one single ideology in a sense, a set of ideas and values. Now it's starting to split, and you have the hardcore libertarians, the original group. It's getting smaller and smaller. I think we've seen that, right? Especially after, you start hearing, involvement of governments with Bitcoin. It like clashes, like completely with the original, philosophy of Bitcoin, right? It crashes because it was supposed to be like, completely independent from, it was against the government, big government, against, this kind of thing. So that group is getting smaller, but they were never really traders, right? They were more like enthusiasts, and the hodlers, I think they're still strong. I see that they're still strong. You still have a lot of people holding. Maybe they don't really talk about it as much as before, but I think that's pretty strong community. You see it in the price, right? Why is the price 82,000 on Bitcoin? Because you have this community of people that they want to hold. They believe in Bitcoin. They not get scared by 10%, 15%, 20% drops, even 30%. They don't get scared. So that's a huge community. So that's that's growing, right? That's emerging over time. If it keeps growing, price is going to be higher and more stable for Bitcoin. That's for sure, because it's just a result of just more people holding. So the casual investors, I think that connects to what you were saying about Solana, the volume going down. The casual investors right now, they are scared. I tell you, I mean, you just look at the headlines, you look at the markets, you look at pretty much every asset class, everything is going down. Why? You have uncertainty, new president, these tariff threats. The market doesn't like these tariff threats. Now you can argue whatever you want about the economy of it, how much it makes sense. Yeah, we're going to do that. We're going to pay the debt. We did, interest on the debt. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. It's the right choice, but the market doesn't like it. Even if it could be the right choice for the country, but it doesn't mean that it's the right choice for investments or for the market. So you see that every time you have an headline about tariffs, boom, market tanks. And you see it now. Tomorrow we have the big announcement. April 2 should be like supposedly the Liberation Day. That's how Trump called it. We don't know, but the market is not liking it. I watched the open today and it was red. Market doesn't like this uncertainty. And casual investors, they tend to buy and invest and get excited when they see headlines that the market is growing, and Bitcoin is hitting a new record, and this and that, like it's hitting a new high. That's where you get the casual investors. When you see these headlines, the casual investors, poof, they disappear. But they're gonna come back. As soon as things turn around, they're gonna come back. And they're gonna come back to crypto. They're gonna come back to stocks, meme stocks, whatever, tech stocks. So it's just a cycle. It's market has cycles. This is a cycle where a lot of uncertainty, but uncertainty brings opportunity, right? So a lot of people who are bolder, they can make a lot of money right now.
Another thing that has affected the market, and they're not as popular, I guess, but they are kind of like NFTs. There are Bitcoin ordinals, right? And that has affected the main Bitcoin chain. And with the halving coming up in, what is it, the 15 days, what do you see as far as the Bitcoin, ecosystem, as far as the price of Bitcoin happening and the value of the ordinals?
So historically, whenever the halving happens, I think a year to a year and a half before, there is historically price action. So if the halving is scheduled for somewhere at the end of this month, the price action started early last year, which is true. And that's exactly when ordinals were announced. Ordinals, I think, sort of came up in December 22, January 23. And then inscription sort of took off and they got a new token standard. NFT marketplaces started supporting them. Wallets started supporting them, etc. So as far as the halving and the ordinals go, I think the timing was very right, regardless of the ETF, based on historical price actions of the halving. Once the halving takes place, Bitcoin's supply is usually crunched because miners get a smaller share. They might hold on more, or they might sell more, etc. Last time, I think in 2020, when the halving happened in May 2020, I remember the price of Bitcoin following the COVID crash was $3,000 to $5,000, and as the year progressed, it inched up to $15,000 to $20,000, and then a year later in 21, it was close to $70,000, from which it started descending. Right, so there was a lot of fervor after the halving because people had less Bitcoin that they received, and there was generally a supply crunch for the miners. which could be the case this year. But this year, the difference is that for the first time, Bitcoin has monetary utility beyond just monetary security. People can actually use the Bitcoin to pay for fees for getting a piece of media inscripted on the Bitcoin blockchain, which is kind of the same thing as an NFT. And given that we've seen support for it, we could see a lot more ordinals sort of kick off, provided the fees are tempered. I think the fees rose significantly last year during the ordinals hype, and since then has descended as price action fell, and right now it's coming back up again. Few interesting things that I'm seeing. One is from Magic Eden. I think there's something called Bitcoin runes that the developer who started the ordinals inscription is sort of launching, which is similar to ordinals itself, but it has easier minting and transacting, which is going to sort of increase the velocity at which people trade ordinals. If the attention still comes, we don't know. But the way I see it is that attention for monetary utility on Bitcoin is lower than on most other chains, simply because applications are lower on Bitcoin compared to Ethereum and Solana. And people don't see it as such. They see it more as a buy and hold, buy and transact, buy and move capital around in dire straits, as opposed to use it. But ordinals proved it otherwise, where there was $1 billion of more of trading volume on ordinals marketplaces combined, and maybe even individually. I'm not sure. I think Magic Eden leads that race. So there is a lot going on. But yeah, it's interesting to see Bitcoin moving from security to utility.
And I don't understand you. I'm going to ask you more. You said we're going to get into more granularity. My next question is this: why should growth marketers avoid the low feeding fruit, right, of tapping into user greed during bull markets? And so, what is the low feeding fruit, and why should you avoid using greed as a way to market?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess the best way to answer that is to sort of separate the crypto industry into two buckets, right? So I segment the crypto industry by, here's a company that is saying that they're building a solution for something, but ultimately is just a cash grab. How do you get people enticed to pump the price of a token and, sort of get a quick win, and then ultimately the technology never gets built, or it gets built in a half-assed way and ultimately doesn't deliver value? Then you kind of have the other side of the coin, which is companies that are building real scalable technologies that are solving real problems, that have applications in the real world, that also then kind of, they do have their native tokens that reflect the value of what those companies are bringing into the real world. And so, I would say first and foremost, the former kind of companies, they're all low feeding fruit, right? Anybody that's building a company just to pump the price of a token and sort of, walk away with investor dollars is, I would say that's just not, it's not a world that I'm just into operating in. And, I don't ever judge people for doing what they do and doing what they think is right. But I think ultimately that's just like one way to operate. And now the other way to operate is, even some companies that are building legitimate products that are going to potentially revolutionize the way that things are done in the real world. I think it's very easy, especially in financial markets, to capitalize on greed. I think, everybody wants to make a quick buck. Everybody wants some sort of monetary reward. Companies are trying to compete with decreasing attention spans by offering incentives for people to sign up and, complete actions on their platform and sort of like stimulate engagement. But ultimately, and I've seen this play out in every industry I've ever been in over the last decade, operating from a place of stimulating and incentivizing greed is never a sustainable business model. The types of users and the types of customers that you bring onto your platforms by rewarding sort of greedy instincts are not the types of customers that are actually interested in your product. They're not the types of customers that are going to stay around. They're not the types of people that are going to bring value to an ecosystem. They're really looking to serve themselves in the short term, and ultimately are just not, you know, again, it's one thing to pump your numbers and show exponential rocket ship growth, and all of those things are great in the short term. But I think if you are building a long-term sustainable business and trying to have real impact, that's just not the type of community that's going to stick around in a product. And so, everything from as basic as just like massively incentivized referral engines to trying to give away tons of tokens for folks to come onto a platform to and any of those types of tactics, like I would say, they're applicable to some extent, but really that's not the growth trajectory that a real long-term sustainable business is going to operate on. And so, there's been, I think, referral programs were just such a hot topic, like Dropbox and PayPal, and like a lot of these companies grew through referrals. But there's been a lot of research done ultimately on, companies that have built a foundation on that and the types of users that are brought in through those channels versus other channels. And those are the users that tend to have the lowest lifetime values, that don't tend to stick around for long periods of time, and just ultimately aren't good contributors to the ecosystem. They don't even really use the products ultimately. They just come in, get what they wanted, and leave. And so as a growth marketer, especially somebody who tries to think long term and tries to think sustainable, it's just not the approach that I usually tend to take. And I think, things like giveaways and airdrops and incentivized referrals, they all have their place as part of a, sort of diversified marketing mix. Everything that's working is worth testing, but I think ultimately relying on things like that is the downfall of many businesses. And ultimately, unless there's another scalable, predictable acquisition channel that powers a business, it's just hard to build something long term on that.
Online, you've grown an online business really from scratch, like from to nothing to over 2 million per year in revenue, right? For people who are starting out, as entrepreneurs, as founders who are looking to go and build an online business, how do you do that? How do you build it to 2 million a year or more? How do you start from the ground up and build it up? What's some things that, advice you can give people?
Well, that question, I'm going to talk for 2 hours straight. Just kidding. No, that's a tough question. Honestly, part of me feels like I said in the very beginning, I was really fortunate to do that because I didn't know what I was doing. So I was fortunate in the fact that some things happened in my favor. But the other side of that coin is that I literally tried thousands of different things. And so you come and you talk to me and you hear about all this great stuff that I've done, blah, 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 blah. But the truth is that I've done more stupid stuff and messed up more than anybody else and just done the dumbest ideas that you could ever possibly imagine. And I got lucky a couple times. And so I think that's maybe the big lesson is just start something. And then when it doesn't work, go back and do it again and just keep doing it and just keep doing it and just keep adjusting, keep moving forward. Don't look at obstacles and say, oh, I don't have enough money and you have to have money to start a business, or I don't have this, or I don't have these skills. Focus, take an inventory of your giftings, take an inventory of your resources. A gift mix inventory, like I take online tests for my giftings. There's a bunch of them, like a Myers test or whatever. I take I think it's Clifton Strengths Finder test to kind of get your personality. Just like I talked about with the trading personality, business personalities are the same way. You got to find what fits you. So look at your giftings, try to go with your strengths, because everybody has something that they're strong in. Everybody's different. Like I like to talk a lot, right? So I want to create a business where I'm talking. So if you focus on your strengths financially, maybe you don't have a lot of money. I didn't have a lot of money. You know, I had some investments, but I didn't have cash flow. So I had to figure out what I could do that didn't take money. So I had an old computer, I had an internet connection, and that was about it. I was like using free email, free web, free web hosting. Everything was free because I had no money, but I just kept trying different things. And I said, I have an investing skill set. I have a computer skill set because I grew up knowing about computers. I'm going to use my giftings and try something.
And you were not afraid of failure.
You cannot be afraid of failure. And I've fallen on my face a million times, and I've been discouraged, and I've been beat up, and I've, you know, been sad, and all of those emotions that you feel. Like, listen, builders and entrepreneurs and investors, you know, they go through it. They go through the ups and the downs, and it's really tough.
Yeah. I want to get your point. I'm thinking, you know, it's a 3 year, it's kind of like a 3 cycle thing. The first cycle, you waste your money by spending too much. You think you need money, you waste it. In the second cycle, you lose all your money. And in the third cycle, you start to make money. You know, that's kind of like what a lot of people go through. You know, that's why like the 3 year wide receiver is good in football, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, but again, I think it's a little bit different for everybody because it's hard for me because I'm not very cautious, right? So I've done all those mistakes, but I have friends in business, and I get a little envious of them because they're a little more meticulous and they're slow moving and they calculate everything, and they just like, so if you talk to some of those guys, they're going to give you different answers than me. And I'm not envious because I know that they have a different mindset and different gifting, but there's two different ways of getting it done. I move a little faster, they move a little slower, but they might avoid some of the ups and downs and the valleys that I have. You know, so again, that's kind of a personality thing. But yeah, I definitely went through those cycles, and I still go through them, you know, like, you know, I hit my all-time high, you know, $2 million. And I think that I finally figured it out after 15 years. And then I just start making mistakes again. It's like, oh, what was I thinking? I thought that I had hit the home run. I thought I was finally there. And then, you know, more obstacles, right? So you've never made it. You're never there. Anytime you want to get to the next level, there's always things that you got to beat back and solve. It's a journey. So learn to enjoy the journey.
well, everybody, that was episode 13. Peace of mind? Well, after listening to this, and the full episodes are available on Crypto Hipster, on Spotify, on YouTube, on Apple, anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast. After listening to this interview, you know, let me know your thoughts. You know, do you have peace of mind? Would you like to have peace of mind? What's your investment mandate? Is your investment mandate chasing the newest meme? Is it chasing the newest privacy coin or the oldest privacy coin and what's happened recently in the market? What do you, where are we at? Do you make too many decisions based on impulse? Would you like to break free from that impulse? And how, if you have and you want to, listen to this podcast in their entirety, and then let me know your thoughts on how these episodes can be helpful to you in your life. So, thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next time on the Curtain Calls, Crypto Hipsters Curtain Calls compilations from season 6, 7, and 8. Talk to you soon. Have a wonderful day.